So Z-spheres are a tool in ZBrush that allows us to generate meshes that we can sculpt on. It's basically a tool for creating polygon models that does not rely on face or edge extrusion. It allows you to create essentially what is an armature. It's a framework around which a polygon mesh is generated. Now, Z-spheres have been in ZBrush for a long time. It's a very, very old tool. And as a result, a lot of people aren't aware of how to use it properly, or they're not even aware that they exist. Z-spheres are still very, very useful, especially if you need to create something that's not necessarily a biped. Most of the time, if you're making a biped, you're going to use a generic base mesh. But what if you're making a dragon? Or what if you're making a crab with bat wings? If you have to make something unusual, then Z-spheres are actually really useful to generate those meshes. What's also nice about Z-sphere generated meshes are, of course, they're all polygons, they're all quads. The faces are automatically pointing the correct direction. So you can use things like nanomesh, which we talk about in a later chapter, more effectively. You don't have to go in and orient all the faces so your nanomesh insertions are all pointing the same direction. It also has the benefit of polygrouping as you build. Not only that, but if you understand Z-spheres, then you can also use Z-spheres for rigging using the Transpose Master plugin, which uses it's able to use Z-spheres as a rig, so you can do posing, which is more similar to the way you would pose with a rig in Maya rather than using the transpose line. So how do we use Z-spheres? Well, first off, we're going to go to the tool palette, and you'll find the Z-sphere here. It looks like this. It becomes our active tool, and it'll just click and drag to draw it on the canvas, and then immediately go into edit mode by pressing the T hotkey. Now, Z-spheres are one of the few tools in ZBrush where you're going to want to not use your tablet pen. You can use a tablet pen with Z-spheres, but I find that it's very easy to accidentally tap a couple times with the pen, and then you create new spheres. Now, those spheres could be so small, you might not even realize that you've done that. So you see there's an extra sphere there that we don't want. So the first thing that I would recommend is that you do this using your mouse. Take your draw size, turn it all the way down to 1. So now you've just got a single point that you're using to create Z-spheres. So let's go ahead and undo that. And I will turn on X symmetry. So make sure that we're looking straight down the Z-axis at our Z-sphere. Now, this first sphere, this is called the root Z-sphere. This is the only sphere in the chain that we're going to create that can never be deleted. This also needs to be in between two other spheres, and I'll show you why that is. If I bring the two green dots together, I know that I am now at the center of the Z-sphere. So I've turned off perspective, bring those two dots together, click and drag, and that draws a new sphere. Now, if I want my new sphere to be bigger, I just draw it bigger. If I want it to be smaller, I just stop drawing it when it's smaller. If I want this Z-sphere, which is a child of the root sphere, to be the same size as its parent, as I'm drawing it, hold the Shift key down. Let go of the mouse. Now you see that that sphere is lit up. This is very important. Just double-click somewhere off the model, and that deselects your Z-spheres. That's also really important because, again, one of the things about Z-spheres that can make them a little challenging is that you may accidentally link to a previous sphere and not know it. So as you're working, it's just a good working practice to draw your child sphere, double-click to deselect, and then you'll draw the next one. So here you see we've got our root sphere and we have our child sphere. Now, if I press the A key, A is an apple, that's going to preview the mesh that will be generated by this. So you see it's creating kind of half a capsule. And if I go into frame mode, you can see that this is displaying as a Dynamesh. This mesh does not exist right now. This is just a preview. What we're doing is, if we go to the tool menu, go down here to adaptive skin, there's a preview button here, and the hotkey for that you see is A. If I press the A key again, it drops me back into my Z-spheres. So when you press the A key, you're previewing the mesh that your Z-sphere chain is going to create. You also see that we have a density slider here and a Dynamesh resolution. So I don't want this to display as Dynamesh, even though most of the time I'll generate a Z-sphere model and I'll probably Dynamesh it and carry on sculpting and then Z-remesh it. So if I turn Dynamesh resolution down to 0 and then press the A key, the preview I get is just normal polygons. But you also see it's not capping the end anymore. It's hollow. So I'll press the A key again. I'll rotate around to the other side of the root sphere. Click and drag to draw a new child, press and hold the Shift key, let go of the mouse, and then double-click on the background. Now I have the root sphere with 2 child spheres on either side, and if I press the A key, you see I've got a capsule shape now. It's all polygon quads, and there's 2 different polygroups. Each Z-sphere gets its own polygroup. So let's press the A key again. So this is going to be the central pillar of my figure. So currently I am in draw mode. If I go to W for move, I can now click and drag these Z-spheres. So you see I'm dragging these in space. Now we're looking straight down the Y-axis, so I'll snap to a side view here and just pull this sphere down and bring this sphere up. So the pillar is going straight up, kind of like the spinal column would. So now with the central pillar, we can start to add limbs. I'll go back to draw, and I'll draw 2 spheres for shoulders, and we'll freehand them. We don't want to snap them to be the same size as the parent. Double-click off the model, come down here, and then click, drag, and draw 2 spheres for the hips. Now I can go to W for move, and I can shift these wherever I want them to be. And if I click in between them, you see it moves in this kind of unusual way. If I hold down the Alt key and then click in between 2 spheres, I can move the whole chain. If I Alt click in between 1 sphere away from the root, I can then move the chain above that. So if I click between the hips and the bottom sphere, it moves up. So if I Alt-click between the root sphere and the next sphere, nothing happens. If I Alt-click between any other 2 spheres, it will move the entire chain. So here, Alt-click, and I can move the rest of the chain. So if we go to the side view, I'll change the height by going to W for move, bring that root sphere up just a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and use move to bring the shoulders down, just to relax those, and bring the hips down a little bit. Press the A key to preview. Now, as you're drawing your mesh, I do recommend that you preview often, because if you have a problem, you'll have to delete going back through your spheres to the point where the problem occurred. So after each sphere or each couple spheres, I always press the A key and check. So let's put the arms on. Q for draw, click and drag, snap to the same size as the parent, W for move, and then pull those arms off. Now let's do the same thing for the legs. Q for draw. Start drawing a new sphere. After you start drawing, press and hold Shift so it snaps to the same size as the parent. Double-click off the model, W for move, and then move those legs down. Now let's say I want to scale a chain. E for scale. So your hotkeys are W for move, E for scale, R for rotate. So if I click on this sphere and click drag, I can scale these spheres down, tapering the limbs. Press the A key to preview the mesh, and you can see the effect. Now I want to insert spheres for the elbows and knees. Q for draw, and just click where the elbow will be, and it adds a sphere in the chain. The same thing for the knees. Double-click off the model and go to W for move, and then you can position the knees and the elbows and bring the wrists up. And press the A key to preview the mesh. So you see we can very, very quickly generate what would usually take a bit of time if we were extruding faces and making a box model in Maya, or even really using ZModeler, because you're having to focus on extruding face to face to face. But what makes Zsphere so nice, it's based around the concept of an armature. And if you've ever sculpted in clay, you'll be familiar with an armature. It's just a wire skeleton, essentially, that sits inside your clay, and you pile clay up on top of it and sculpt, and you can also bend it and pose it. Same thing is true with Z-spheres. So think of it as an armature. Also, some people if you go back and look at older tutorials about Z-spheres, people will spend a lot of time adding a whole bunch of spheres to do things like this. Maybe they'll add a sphere in the waist and taper that down. They might add spheres at the thighs and scale those up and then move them. The idea being that they want to get the curvature of the body. Now, that's pretty neat. I think it's actually overcomplicating it and a waste of time, because you can make those same changes with the move brush very, very quickly. I just use these spheres as a basic tool to generate a model upon which I'll start sculpting, which ultimately will be remeshed anyway. So I don't worry about adding things other than the proportions and the gesture of the figure. So I will add the gesture. That's why I put the curvature of the spine in and the bend in the knees and the elbows. We'll go ahead and leave the one that's in the waist there, because it's not a bad idea, because I can take that, move it forward a little bit, and add a little bit of curvature to the spine with that. So we have a central figure. We have the appendicular skeleton, the arms and legs. So let's take a look now at how to put a head on this. I'll go back to draw, bring the two dots together, and draw a sphere for the root of the neck. Double click off the model. Now we're going to leave that sphere where it is. That's just the base of the neck. I'll draw a child sphere, snap it to the same size. Just start to draw, press and hold the shift key, and it snaps to the same size. W for move, and bring that neck up and out. Now this is important. This is a very common mistake. People treat the neck as though it's a pillar coming straight up out of the torso. It's not. Your first rib is actually sitting at an angle, so the neck comes out at an angle. So give it that little bit of forward inclination, and it will help the gesture of the figure a lot. Now if I press the A key, you see we're getting a pretty nice all quad mesh. It's very basic, very simple, but it's just what we're going to need. And again, we're more often than not going to dynamesh this or retopologize it anyway. So I wouldn't get too concerned with the topology it's generating. While you can adjust things like this back here just by changing the scale of this particular sphere. So if I alter the sphere and then preview the mesh again, you see it does change the resulting topology, but the topology in your Z-sphere mesh is not a major concern. So don't become preoccupied with it. We're just trying to generate a base upon which we can sculpt. So we have the neck, but now we need the head. So we'll go to the top of the neck, go into draw mode, and then click and drag to draw a new sphere for the head. Now notice that the other spheres are sitting inside of this sphere. So when I press the A key, the head disappears. So press the A key again and go to W for move, and then pull that neck up so I see the transition rings. Now I see the full head. So what this is a built-in warning system that ZBrush has with Z-spheres. So there's another one is if I have two spheres that are too close together. For example, if I have a sphere here and I move it up too close to the others, you see I get this sort of transparent transition area there. That's just a visual warning that the proximity is too close there. So undo that. Now what if I want to delete a sphere? Those two spheres that I just put in here, maybe I've done a whole bunch more adding of Z-spheres and I don't want to undo all the way back to that point. We can get rid of these in draw mode, hold down the Alt key and just click on that sphere and it will delete it. Alt clicking on a sphere will delete it. The only sphere that you can't delete is the root sphere. All the others can be deleted. So let's press the A key again. This is our mesh in progress. So we have a head, neck, shoulders, arms, legs. Let's add a bit more here. Let's go to W for move. Now remember, if we hold down the Alt key and click in between two spheres, we can move the chain around. So if I Alt click between the shoulder and the elbow, I can extend the arms and broaden the shoulders. Press the A key and you can preview that. I'm going to take the move tool, that's W for move, and move the elbow and adjust the wrist. Now another nice thing too is I can go to R for rotate and I can rotate the arms down and check my proportions and just make sure that the hands are going to fall where I want them to, just about a third of the way down the thigh. So those are just the wrists right now. That's not the full hand. but it's a nice way to be able to pose and check your proportions as you go. So I'm going to go to Q for draw. Double click off the model so nothing is selected. We're going to do a hand by drawing a new sphere. Hold the Shift key after you start drawing it to snap it to the same size as the parent. Press W and just drag that off to the side and scale it up. So this is going to be the wrist, and that's going to be the palm. Now I'm going to draw another child sphere on the hand, snap it to the same size, and double click off the model. I'll bring that forward just a tiny bit using move, W for move. Now what we're doing here is we're going to create a thumb out of this sphere, the palm sphere, and 4 fingers out of that sphere. So go to Q for draw, click and drag, and that creates the root of the thumb. Double click off the model, and there you can see it. Now I'll draw a child sphere here and snap it to the same size, and then go to W for move, and we'll just drag that sphere out. Q for draw, we'll insert a joint right there, and just W for move, and we can add a little bit of a bend to that thumb. I'm in rotate mode now, so I can R for rotate, and we can rotate those spheres up a little bit so the thumb is sitting at kind of the proper angle. There we go. Now press the A key to preview the mesh and make sure all looks good. So let's press the A key to drop out of that preview. Now we're going to add the fingers. So I will begin by adding 4 child spheres along the surface of this sphere here. So we'll do 1. Oops, go to Q for draw. We'll do 1 sphere. Double click off the model. 2nd sphere. Double click. 3rd sphere. And our pinky sphere we want to make a little bit smaller, like that. So there's our 4 fingers. Now if I press the A key, it just makes these 4 little shapes like this. Press the A key again to drop out of preview mode. Go to Q for draw, and I'm going to draw child spheres. I'm going to start drawing that sphere and then press the Shift key to snap it to the same size as the parent. And we're going to do that for each of the fingers. And I just double click off between each one. Now go to W for move, and this is why we want our draw size all the way down to 1. If our draw size were bigger and I tried to move, it's going to move everything. With the draw size set to 1, it only moves the sphere that I select. So let's bring the index finger, bring it forward, middle finger, ring finger, and the pinky finger. Press the A key, and that gives us our mesh preview. Now, don't worry about the fact that it looks inflated, because with the move brush, in a matter of moments, you're going to be able to go in here and shape this into a reasonable hand. So don't worry about that. We just are trying to generate the topology to work on. Now, with that mentioned, I should also point out that you can move and shape your preview mesh. That's something to be very careful of, because a pitfall I see a lot is that people will start sculpting on their preview mesh, not understanding that it is just a preview. If I press the A key again, it goes away. So you really don't want to be sculpting on that preview mesh. That's something that you want to avoid. You want to do your sculpting on your mesh once you've actually generated it. So don't forget, if you're in preview mode, and start sculpting on that. So here you can see that we've got the hand kind of facing down. It's supinated or pronated. So I'll go to R for rotate. And then if I click on the wrist sphere, I can rotate the entire hand. If I click in between the wrist sphere and the palm sphere, I can move the hand back. And maybe I want to bend all this down a little bit like this. Let's bring that thumb up a little bit, and the thumb does come out of the palmar side a little bit more. So let's do that. And then we'll take our move and just stretch these fingers out. Now, if I want to change the length of the arms, I'll go to W for move, Alt-click in between 2 spheres, and I can stretch that arm. Do the same thing here. I can stretch the forearm, and then just move the elbow wherever I want it to be. Press the A key to preview. And if I do R for rotate and just rotate these hands down, you can see, well, my arms have gotten pretty long, so I probably want to adjust my proportion. So I'll do W for move, and I'll click in between these two spheres and hold down the Alt key and just drag those down so the legs are in the right proportion, or the torso is the right proportion to the legs. And then we'll just bring the ankles down, bring the knees down. There we go. And then I'll just go back to R for rotate and then position my arms back where I want them to be. Press the A key to preview our mesh. Now, if we want to put feet on here, we do it very, very similar to the way that we did the hands. I will create a sphere for the ankles. So just go to Q for draw, click and drag, press the shift key to snap. So there's my ankle now. W for move, and we'll just pull those down. I'll draw a child sphere here for the front of the foot. That would be the long bones of the foot. And go to the back here and just draw a child sphere here and leave that as the heel. So that's going to give me a little bit of geo there for the heel. Now, if I want to create toes, then what I would do is go to Q for draw. I would draw 5 spheres here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we would treat these the same way that we did the fingers, by drawing child spheres on each one of those toes, snapping them to the same size as the parent, just by holding down the shift key after we've started drawing. So now we'll take the move, W for move, pull those toes out like this. And I can grab in between these spheres and I can sort of bring these toes close together and give them a little bit of like the inclination maybe of the toes sort of smooshing together a little bit, as they have a tendency to do. And bring that big toe forward and down. Press the A key and F for focus, and then you can see what we get here. Now, don't worry, again, about getting the absolute perfect shape of the toes, because you're going to do that with the move brush much, much faster than you're going to be able to do it just by coming in here and sort of finessing around with the individual spheres. It's not important. We just want to get the geometry there to work with. So let's press F for frame to frame the mesh. And there we go. So we've got our basic body. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. By the way, this on almost all of these chapters, I am saving the files so they are there for you to have access to when you are working through. So you can actually open up my Zsphere chain and see it and replicate it if you're having trouble understanding what it should look like. So let's take a look at some customizations that we can do. If I want to thin the entire Z-sphere chain, I can go to E for scale, click in between any two spheres, hold down the Alt key, click and drag, and I can thin out everything along that chain. If I go between the root and any other sphere, hold down the Alt key, I can thin the entire chain. Now, this is something that you will use when you're doing Z-sphere rigs. And that's actually really important. If you generate your model using a Z-sphere skeleton, you can save that Z-sphere skeleton and then use it as a posing rig when it's time to pose your character. So that's kind of a really nice aspect of this. So let's put some knuckles into the fingers. That's a nice customization. We don't want those fingers to just be stiff little tubes sticking out. We'll go to Q for draw, and then I will just add some knuckles along here. Now I will go to R for rotate, and we'll add some gesture to the hand here just by bending those fingers. Put a little bit of curvature into the fingertips. And there we go. Press the A key, and now you've got a little bit of curvature in the hand that feels a bit more natural. It's a good starting point. Now, it's not necessary to have edge loops, especially because most of the time you would be dynameshing. But if you wanted to generate edge loops, like edge extrusions for, face extrusion patterns for eyes and a mouth bag, just go to draw, Q for draw, and put two little spheres here for eyes and a little sphere for a mouth, press the A key, and it will give you that extrusion pattern. Now, of course, the head is not fully formed here. You would still need to shift the shapes around, but it does put the geometry in there. Now, that is a feature from ZBrush from before we had ZRemesher and before we had Dynamesh. So it's not something that's often used, but I thought it was important to illustrate that this is possible. So I'm going to press the A key and just undo those, get rid of those. Now let's say I want to change the overall posture of the character. Well, I can go to R for rotate, and I can rotate the waist. Maybe I want to rotate the torso here. Bring that back, bring this forward, bring the legs down. We give it quite a bent, almost a scoliosis spine here. There we go. Let's bring that there, move that forward. I can go to R for rotate, and we're basically just posing it like you'd pose a little like doll. Bring the arms down, and I might take W for move and just drop the shoulders a little bit. I really like it when the shoulders don't have that really stiff kind of look to them. So here we've almost got like a vulture neck. I can shorten the limbs just by clicking in between two spheres while I'm in move mode. W for move, Alt click in between two spheres to change the length of a limb. So I can make those legs shorter if I want to. Maybe we want to add a tail. Go to Q for draw, click and drag to make a base for the tail, draw a child sphere, and then I'll take W for move and pull that child sphere away from the body, go to Q for draw, and then draw some spheres along the length of it. Go to W for move, and we can add some curvature to that tail. Press the A key to preview our mesh. So you see it's really not a problem to just work up any type of figure that you might need. And again, like I said, these are Z-spheres for me really shine when you're tasked with creating something that's not a standard biped. Like perhaps we need wings on here, so I would draw the wings joining into the torso. I'd move the child sphere off and then use Q for draw to add a few spheres along the length. And then I would go to W for move, and then I would position these spheres along the silhouette of the wing structure. Go to R for rotate. Click in between these two spheres, and I can rotate those wings back like this. And then if I want there to be a bone structure inside those wings, which would be a good thing to have, because usually, if it's like a bat type wing, you're going to have a bone structure in there. What I can do is I can just add a child sphere on each one of these spheres here. I'm going to snap it to the same size and use W for move to shift it down and away just a little bit. Press the A key to preview my mesh so you see the beginnings of our bone structure. And then I will draw another child sphere on each one of these. W for move, and just pull these down. And these are going to serve as the bone structure, but I want them to be a bit thinner. So I can either taper the tips like this, or I can go ahead and create the rest of the spheres that I need along the length of these bones to give them their proper gesture, because I don't want them to just be straight. So I'll pull this one out a little bit with W for move, put a little arc there, and then I'll just bring these back a little bit in space to give a little bit of bow to the wings. Then go to E for scale, Alt-click in between these two bones, or these two spheres, and I can taper that way. If I Alt-click in between these two spheres, I can taper the entire length of that bone. So there we go. Let's Alt-click there, and so we can thin the individual pieces of that wing structure like that. And if I want to make further changes to it, I can do R for rotate, and I can adjust the absolute complete layout of these wings entirely. Go to W for move, and I can change the gesture, as it were, of the wing bones. Give it a little bit better curvature there. Now, if I want to get rid of spheres, remember, it's Q for draw, and you just Alt-click on spheres to delete them. Now, be careful, because you can do something like this, where I've deleted a sphere, and then this sphere has two spheres coming off of it. So you want to be real careful as you're deleting to make sure that you actually get all the spheres. So here I've orphaned these spheres off in space. So if I preview the mesh, you see it's gonna force a connection there. So I'm going to alt click on these to get rid of them. There we go. Double click off the model, press the A key to preview, and now those wings are gone. Press the A key to drop out of my preview, and then I'm just going to alt click along these to get rid of those. Now, if I want to turn this into an actual model that I can sculpt on, what I need to do is under Tool, Adaptive Skin, you see that I've got the Make Adaptive Skin button right here. So there's a few things here. We've seen preview. The density slider controls the polygon density. So if I set this to 3 and press A for preview, the preview will be the equivalent of 3 subdivision levels. If I were to turn this down and then preview again, it's just 2 subdivision levels. Dynamesh resolution will give me a preview of what the mesh would look like at a specific Dynamesh resolution. Now, I typically don't use that. We can control the radial density. If we're doing radial Z-spheres, maybe we're doing tentacles coming out of a central radius. And we have this button here, classic skinning. Now, if you have not used Z-spheres before, you'll probably never need to use this. This is here because the Z-sphere algorithm was rewritten several versions ago. So if you're trying to open something that was maybe put out in 2006, 2007, a Z-sphere model, the skinning might not work correctly. So that's why this button is here. You can turn that on and it uses the classic skinning method. The classic skinning method is actually nowhere near as good. It doesn't really look very nice. If we turn that off, we get what's called what you see is what you get, WYSIWYG. Your Z-sphere model will look pretty close to your Z-sphere armature, your Z-sphere chain. So here I've got the Make Adaptive Skin button. Now if I click this, watch my tool menu here. If I click this, a new model appears called Skin 001. So I'm going to press the A key to drop out of preview. This is really important. Be careful of this. This is my Z-sphere model. This Skin 001, that's my sculptable mesh. You do not want to sculpt on the preview on your Z-sphere model. So be real careful of that you're not sculpting on your preview. This is just a standard polygon model. I can step down my subdivisions. I can step up. I can add geometry. So this is normal. We can Dynamesh this and carry on working on it. What I like to do is go to my subtools and I will append my original Z-sphere chain into this and just keep it handy. Because as you'll see in the video on transpose posing, we can use that Z-sphere chain later as a rig to pose our character. So it's really nice to have that around. The important thing, and I cannot stress this enough, is don't make the mistake of sculpting on your preview mesh. Your preview mesh is not a sculptable model. You need to make an adaptive skin, and this is the model that you actually sculpt on. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I want to show you something that's kind of neat, something that I like to do with Z-spheres. I mentioned in our quick start video that I would create a body for our quick start head using Z-spheres. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our Z-sphere chain to create a body for this figure. So the way that I'll do that is I'm just going to append in a Z-sphere and then build the body out from that. I could even append in my Z-sphere chain that we've already created. So under the subtool menu, click Append and select a Z-sphere, and that will add a Z-sphere into your subtool chain. Now, the Z-sphere may very well be sitting inside the head, as you can see there. So what I'll do is I'll go to W for move, and I'll make sure that my X symmetry is turned on. Let's turn on solo. And if you've got X symmetry turned on, you will, of course, have the 2 dots here. Now we are in move mode, so I'm just going to move that sphere down. And it's very, very small, so I'm going to go to E for scale and scale it up. And this will be the root sphere. There we go. And I will just position this about where the middle of the chest would be. I don't necessarily want this to be the rib cage, so we'll do it in the middle of the torso about here. Now we'll go to Q for draw, turn on solo, and I will draw a child sphere here, double click off the model, and a child sphere here, double click off the model. Going a little bit faster this time because you've seen the process. I just want to show you how we'll use this to add a body onto an existing model like we're doing here. So we've got our center pillar of the body. So I'll do Q for draw, and let's create some hips here. Double click off the model, go to solo mode, and actually let's go to transparency and just bring our Z-sphere up here for our shoulders, and then I'll draw two child spheres for the shoulders like this. And then we'll go to W for move and bring these out, and we'll just make them sit inside the shoulders of our existing character. Press the A key to preview our mesh. Remember, A is just a preview. It's not actually a sculptable mesh. So there you can see is our preview mesh. Press the A key again to drop out of that. Also remember, under adaptive skin, you want to set your Dynamesh resolution to 0. So it's not showing you a Dynamesh, it's just showing you the mesh. And that'll actually speed up that preview. So let's go ahead and put some arms on here. Go to Q for draw, and we'll draw some child spheres here and just snap them to about the same size as the shoulder. And I'll just do W for move and just pull these down. And then go to E for scale and Alt-click in between those two spheres so I can just scale that chain down a little bit. And W for move to move the shoulders out. And then I'll move the elbow back. Press the A key to preview. There we go. Press the A key again to drop out of preview mode. And I'll do Q for draw, and let's put some legs on here. We'll just draw two child spheres for the legs. W for move, and we'll just pull these down in space. W for move, let's widen those hips and bring those hip spheres down just a little bit. Press the A key to preview. So looking pretty good. And I'm going to press the Q key for draw, and we'll put some knees in there, and then E for scale will scale down the legs a little bit. And I'm just going to do W for move, bring the knee forward a little bit, bring the ankle back. Now I'm going to extend the wrists down using the move brush. And Q for draw, and let's put an elbow in here. And then W for move, we'll just bring the wrists forward a little bit. Now, I've probably got the torso a little too long. So let's go to W for move, Alt-click in between the hip and the bottom Z-sphere of the central skeleton there. Hold down the Alt key and we can pull that up a little bit. We can actually bring the root sphere up just a little bit here. Press the A key, and that gives us an idea of what our overall gesture is looking like. Now, if I want to measure my proportions, so I've got my general body shape in here. I'm going to press the Alt key and click on the head. I'm going to go to W for move, and I'm going to turn off the transpose gizmo, and that gives me this transpose line. Now, we have a whole video just on the transpose line, but what I want to show you is if I click and drag on the model, it creates this line. So if I turn off X symmetry, if I click on the chin, hold down the Shift key, and then drag this line straight up, I'll get a straight line like this. Let go. Click on this circle and just hold the Shift key and just drag this straight down so we get one measure of the head here. Go to Preferences, go to Transpose Units, set our calibration distance to 1, so that now reads as 1 unit. One head. Now, this is not a normal human head, but we can kind of get a feel for the overall proportion in terms of a head cannon by holding down the Shift key, clicking on this circle, and dragging it down to where the pubic bone would be, right about there. Now, that should be the midpoint of the figure, and if this figure were 8 heads tall, this is pretty good. It's 4.4, so it's a little taller than 8 heads. Now, this also tells me that if I take this circle and bring this all the way down to where the bottom of the feet would be, I should have another 4 units. So that gives me an 8-head tall figure. If I turn on perspective mode, we can get an idea of that character in perspective. So that's just a nice way to measure out your proportions and make sure that they are what you're expecting them to be. So if I go back to my sphere, let's go to the Z-sphere chain here. Go to Q for draw, and we'll just put our feet in there. So I'm going to draw a couple spheres here for the feet, and maybe we'll make these kind of a weird, different sort of foot structure here. Maybe we'll put some long phalange bones here, and do a sphere here for the front of the foot. Bring this forward, and do a sphere for the heel. I always put a sphere back there for the heel. W for move. Press the A key to preview. Press the A key again, go to W, we'll just bring that up a little bit. Put a little bit more bend in that knee. And I'm going to go to R for rotate, and I'm going to open those legs a little bit, just so there's a little bit more sort of spring in that gesture. Now, a lot more of that we're going to introduce once we're actually sculpting, but I just want to give a little bit kind of like a relaxed posture. So I'm going to do the wrists now. Let's zoom in here, go to Q for draw. Let's draw a child sphere again to the same size as the parent for our wrist and palm. So that's going to be the first of our palm spheres here. Now our hand is just going to be another child sphere like this. W for move, let's bring that out. E for scale, Alt click in between these two, and I can scale down that chain for the arm. Now I'm going to grow my thumb out of this sphere here, so I'll do Q for draw the base of that thumb, draw the child sphere for the thumb, and then W for move will pull that thumb sphere off. We're still on W for move, I'll grab this sphere here and just pull that off and press the A key to preview. And let's put our fingers in. I'll do 4 child spheres here. That's a little too small. I'll undo that. Go to Q for draw. Do 1, 2, 3. That's too big. Double click off the model, so nothing selected. 3, and then 4. Now we'll draw our child spheres. Just start drawing them and then press and hold the Shift key to snap them to the same size as the parent. W for move, and we'll just pull these fingers off. Let's give them these really long, scary fingers. So bring that index finger forward. And we'll move that middle finger over, and the ring finger and pinky finger. Press the A key to preview our mesh, and then we'll put some joints in there. Let's just zoom out from that a little bit, see how this is looking. Pretty good. So let's put some joints in the fingers. So I'll do my first finger joint along here. Go to R for rotate, and then let's just rotate these finger joints. And then Q for draw again. We'll draw our next set of finger joints. That one's too far back. Let's put that one there. Put this one here. These are a little bit closer to the fingertips. And then we'll go to R for rotate and just give a little bit of curvature to the fingers. It just helps relax the hand. Press the A key to preview the mesh. I'm going to turn off transparency. So there we go. Now if I wanted to put toes onto this character, we'll just turn off preview. And once again, we'll just put a big sphere here for the big toe. Double click off the model, and then we'll draw a child sphere for that toe. And then we can just bring that forward with move. And maybe I want these toes to be a little bit more claw-like, so I'll add a joint there. Go to my side view, about a 3/4. Go to W for move, and let's just move that toe down. Bring that toe joint up a little bit. There we go. Preview our mesh. Now we'll draw the rest of our toe root spheres here. So there's 1 sphere, 2 sphere. Maybe I don't want a full 4 spheres. Maybe this creature only has 4 toes. So I'll draw the child spheres here. And then W for move, we'll pull those spheres forward like this. And then let's bring them down so they're making contact with the ground. And then this sphere here, you see it's a little bit bigger. Go to E for scale, Alt, click and drag in between those 2 spheres, and I can then scale them down. So let's do our joints along the length of the toes. So we'll add 1, 2, 3, and then W for move. We'll give a little bit of curvature to those toes, so they're a little bit more like little claws. Oops. Bring this one up too. Press the A key to preview. Now I'll press the A key to drop out of my preview mode and turn on solo. So I could add another sphere here at the rib cage and then maybe scale that up if I wanted to just sort of adjust the volumes here so that matched up a little bit closer to the rib cage there. I could also scale this sphere up, press the A key, and you see that that further adjusts the shape of the body. I can take my root sphere, and whilst I can't delete it, I can scale it. I could add a scale or add a sphere for the waist here and scale that down a little bit. And we can do a little bit of adjustment in terms of the physique. But again, don't get too caught up in that. We can do that with the sculpting tools later. So here we go. I've got a body now. So what I'd like to do is go to Adaptive Skin and click Make Adaptive Skin. Now that creates a new subtool, which is Skin Zsphere 1 right there. And I will go ahead and append that Skin Zsphere 1 into my stack and then drag that up so it's sitting right under the head. Select it, and then I can just turn off visibility on the Zsphere model. You might also find it handy to create a new folder and just call it Zspheres. And then you can drop that Zsphere model inside that folder and then turn off visibility on it so you don't have to worry about accidentally selecting it later. So now that we've got the body skin mesh loaded in as a subtool, you see there's two subdivisions here. If I press Shift D, I can step down. D steps me back up. What I will do at this stage is I'll just use my subdivision levels to kind of finesse the overall, shape and gesture. And then we can dynamesh the two pieces together and then carry on sculpting the body onto the head. So to begin with, we go into frame mode. You can see we've got some inner penetration up here in the shoulders, which we don't want. So I'll just take my move brush here and just bring these pieces in. And I just want to push in the parts of my Zsphere model that are crashing out through the parts that I like on the sculpture of the bust. So let's just push these bits in here. Now, each Z-sphere has its own polygroup, so that's actually really handy. I can Control-Shift-Click on those to hide them and then easily mask the rest of the model. And then I can just go in here and start pushing and shaping these things to match. So that's actually pretty good right there. I do want that little bit because that does actually make sense that the bicep and coracobrachialis would be going up in there. So there we go. And let's clear the mask. And I'll just Control D to add a subdivision level and take my damn standard brush and just get that little hollow that runs down the spine there. And let's turn off frame mode so we don't have to look at the polygroups. We'll take our clay tubes brush, and I will turn the alpha off on my clay tubes brush and turn that focal shift down so it's a smaller circle. And then let's just get the shape of the rib cage here. Now, anytime I'm working on the center of the body, I often find it really handy to hide the arms and hands so I can see this gesture a lot better. So I want to get that rib cage volume in there like that. Take my move brush. Don't want that to get too big. So let's bring that back. Bring this up. And I'll go back to my clay tubes brush and think about, well, there'll be a pelvis right here. So we'll get that sketched in there. And then there'd be the muscles, the gluteus maximus and gluteus medius, filling that out. And then we probably have the inguinal ligament there, abdomen. And we'll take our standard brush and sort of rough out the arch of the rib cage there. That's called the thoracic arch. And I'll just take my move brush and shift this around. Now I'm going to Control-Shift-Click and isolate these parts here and mask them. And then let's actually get these two. Actually, no, I'll leave those unmasked. Control-click on the background to invert my masking, and I want to get these shapes pulled in. Those are the adductor muscles that sort of fill out the insides of the thighs there. And let's clear our masking. And let's just get a little bit of the outside of the thigh there. I'm not worried too much about the anatomy just yet. I'm really just trying to get the overall major silhouette portions of the body here. That's it. Let's turn on perspective, turn off perspective, and just check everything. Go back to our transpose line. Make sure that our transpose line proportions are still accurate. So let's bring this line down, and pubic bone is about there, and that is 4.5 units. I'm actually okay if this figure is taller, because I want it to be a little bit tall and imposing, because it's got that big crown on its head. But I feel like we could move the waist up a little bit. So I'm going to isolate these, mask everything else, and then control click to feather that mask. And I'll just use my move brush and just shift all that up a little bit. Go into our side view here, and this is, this whole area this would be the pelvis. We'd have the front of the thigh muscles here. So let's just get that kind of shape there. Smooth that back a little bit. Take our clay tubes brush. I just want to get the vastus medialis muscle here. Sort of a teardrop shape coming up this way. Sartorius muscle. Vastus lateralis is out here. Just want to smooth that back a little bit. We're just getting the rough shapes in here before we dynamesh. Take my inflate brush, and we'll just inflate all that. Come around to the back of the calves here, and we'll just inflate the calf muscles a little bit. And that's a bit too much. So let's go to frame mode and Shift F, and I'm just going to isolate that section, invert the mask, feather it, and let's take the clay tubes brush. Using clay tubes, I'm just building up, just real gesturally, the very, very vague shape there of the gastrocnemius muscle. Go to the side view, snap to a side view, and take my move brush, and I'll step down a couple subdivision levels this time with Shift D. Right there, you see what happened? I accidentally hit the hotkey Shift S, that's snapshot. Anytime you have an image like that stuck on your canvas, Control N will clear your canvas. That's real common. It'll happen. It will definitely happen to you, and it usually confuses people when they're new to ZBrush, so I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that and pointed out that it happens to me too. It's just very, very close to the Shift D hotkey, so you can very easily, if you're not looking, which we usually aren't when we're using our hotkeys, you can accidentally trigger that hotkey, which snapshots an image to the canvas instead of changing your subdivision levels. So I'm down at the lowest subdivision level here, just putting in the shapes of the this leg. I'm going to give that a little bit of curve to that, bring this forward a little bit. Now I'm going to alt-click on the body, or on the bust. Make sure that my X symmetry is turned on. And I'm just going to bring this forward a little bit because I want this to actually come out this way. I'm going to alt-click to select the mesh for the body and then bring that out to match the rib cage. There we go. Do a bit of smoothing here. Now I'm going to go back to the arms, make sure that we're on the mesh here, go to frame mode, and I just want to give a little bit of generalized form to the arms here. So I'll just take my clay tubes brush again, kind of sketch in where those bicep muscles and coracobrachialis muscles are going to be. And then I'm going to step down my subdivision levels, and I'm going to take my move brush. The elbow will be about here. So I just want to make sure that that bony landmark is real pronounced right there. And the extensor muscles are going to actually start up here on the forearm, and they create this really specific kind of silhouette to the forearm. So we want to make sure that we get that represented here. And I'm going to hide the body this time. Before I was hiding the arms to work on the body. Well, now I'm going to hide the body so I can really see the arms. The flexor muscles here are going to create a characteristic kind of widening here. There we go. Let's step up a subdivision level. Now I want to rotate these arms so the palms are facing out rather than down. So what I will do is I'll solo this. I will Control Shift click on these polygroups here, and I will just hide these polygroups. And let's get rid of this one too. I'll just go ahead and mask this area here. And then I'll go to R for rotate, and I'm still using this transpose line. I'm going to click right here around the elbow and drag this line straight out. And then I'm going to go to a front view, and I'm going to grab on the circle, not in it, but on it. Click the circle itself. And I'm going to move this line so it sort of runs straight down the length of the forearm bones. So it's basically a line tracing the forearm bones. So now that we've got that line, I'll go to R for rotate, hold down the Alt key, and then click drag inside the center circle. And look, I can rotate that forearm like that. And that brings the palms out. That's called supinating the forearm. So let's clear our mask, turn off solo. And I'll just take my move brush. And again, I'm just trying to get the overall general silhouette of the body. Let's step down our subdivisions and just really go for broke. Go down to the lowest subdivision level. Let's step up one. We could use a little bit more geometry for this. So we'll bring that out, bring this out. There we go. And I want to bring that stomach kind of forward a little bit, and I'm going to hide the arms, and I just want to make sure that I get like a very pronounced sweep to the spine. I'm just going to take this opportunity to adjust the gesture of the body. There we go. And then let's do a little bit of adjustment to the feet here because, you know, we obviously don't want them to look like little boots. So we'll adjust this. Let's bring this back. And we can worry about our toes in a little bit. Give the arch of the feet there. Now I want to extend the toes and the feet forward a bit. So I am going to just hide all of these polygroups here, mask everyone else, reveal all again, and then I'll go to transpose, and we can turn our transpose gizmo back on, and I'll just alt click on a point here to move the gizmo, and then I can just stretch those feet forward so they're a reasonable size. Now we probably want to enlarge our hands as well, so we can do the same thing. I will go ahead and isolate, make sure we clear any masking, and I'll isolate the hands just like this. Mask everyone else, and then reveal all again. Now, there's a few ways that we can do this. I can go to E for scale, Alt-click anywhere to get the gizmo centered on screen, and just click the go to unmasked mesh center. And if you hold down the Control key and then click on the center scale, you can sort of scale these out around the component, which may or may not be what you're looking for. In this case, that's not what I want. So I'm just going to use my move brush, sort of manually tweak some of these hand shapes. And I do want, let's be careful there. We don't want to create a little kink in that. So let me undo that. Looks like my hand got shifted at some point. Yep, it sure did. There we go. So let me go ahead and redo that just to see what I changed there. That's no problem. That wasn't what I intended anyway. So let's clear our masking, and then let's isolate those hands again. Mask everybody else. And then I'll just take my move brush and let's do some tweaking to these shapes. I'm going to rotate these fingers out, to kind of spread them out a little bit more. So I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on these polygroups. I'm going to hide or mask everybody else. Control-Shift-Click to reveal all again. Go back to my transpose gizmo and just Alt-click at the base of that finger, and then I can just rotate it like this. So I can rotate that finger out a little bit. Rotate around there, go to my move brush, clear my masking, and just do a little bit of tweaking that. Just want to spread the fingers a little bit. We'll do the same thing for the middle finger. We'll isolate that, mask everybody else by Control-clicking on the background. Go to our transpose gizmo and just Alt-click at the base of that finger, and then we can rotate with that outer white circle, which just basically rotates around the camera view. Clear my masking. And then I want to stretch the palm. I think a really long hand would be nice and creepy. So let's mask everybody else. Go to the transpose line. Go to a snap to a side view here. We can just stretch that. Go to our move brush. Sort of adjust for that. And maybe we want to make our fingers longer as well. So then I will just Control-Shift-Click to hide all these polygroups. Mask everybody else. Go to our transpose line again. Just go to the unmasked mesh center, and then I can click on one of these corner points here and just stretch those fingers out like that. So we've got a nice general kind of body shape now. I want to join these together. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the head, and I will duplicate the head and then hide my copy of it. I'll go to the body, step up my subdivision levels, like so. And just make sure that there's nothing crashing through that I don't want crashing through. Might take my inflate brush here and just do a little touch on that tricep there. There we go. Make sure I'm at my highest subdivision level, and I might add one more just to get rid of any faceting in the body. And then if I want to add the body to the head, I will just, right now you see that I have the body selected. I'll select my copy of the head, and I'll go to merge, merge down. Now, before we merge, I just want to mention something. If we're planning to Dynamesh, what'll happen is any toes that are close together are going to be merged together, okay? So I'll show you a way around that. So if we've got these toes together, and then I merge this together, I'm actually going to save my work really quickly so we can go back to this before we merge it. So we're saving our file. Now I'm going to go to the head and click merge down, so it merges into the body. Now the body's darker just because it's picked up a different material. Don't think that that's a mask. It's actually not. So you see, I've now merged these together. If I go to geometry, go to Dynamesh, Dynamesh was still turned on the head. So as long as Dynamesh is turned on, if it's not, you can just turn it on now. You'll just need to raise your resolution. But watch what happens if I Control, click, drag. Let's go into frame mode so we can see. Control, click, and drag. And it's going to glue the body and the head together, like so. Turn off frame mode, and there we go. Now, if I've got two different sort of materials here, I can always go to RGB, or excuse me, go to mRGB, go to color, fill object, and that should fill everything with the same gray material, so it has the same look. So now I can carry on with Dynamesh if I want to sculpt on this with Dynamesh and then retopologize it as normal. So that completes this chapter on Z-spheres. We've seen how to use Z-spheres to create new geometry for any type of figure. It could be a biped, quadruped, it could be a bird, it could be anything that you need to create a mesh for quickly. And it's just an alternative to the myriad other ways of creating meshes that are now available inside of ZBrush. And I think it's a really valuable tool to learn and understand because it's not only helpful when you need to create a quick model, it also directly influences how you create rigs for transpose posing. We've also seen how we can take Z-spheres to create a body and then glue that onto an entirely different mesh and then carry on sculpting, creating a full figure where before we simply had a bust. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thanks for watching.